Being a Rotarian is now even more rewarding. Rotary Global Rewards, our member benefit program, offers amazing ways to save. So Rotarians get more out of life and do what they do best. Give back. The good you do comes back to you. Rotary Global Rewards. Find out more at rotary.org/myrotary.
Welcome, everyone, to the Rotary Club of Tulsa here on, what is this, St. Patrick's Day Eve? Is that right? Something to note. Welcome in the middle of the spring break, and I'm glad you took time on this Wednesday to see us here at Rotary. I think you'll be glad you came. Today, Mike Homan will give our invocation to start our meeting, followed by Phil Armstrong, who will lead us in our song and then the pledge, and then Catherine DeCamp will introduce our visitors. So Mike, make your way up and lead us in prayer, please.
Good afternoon. If you'll please join me in prayer. Father, help us to respect the religious beliefs of others and to promote freedom of thought and expression. Let us live the four-way test by being fair and truthful with all people at all times. We pray for when the world is free from all hatred, racism, and bigotry. But until that day, help us to work together to make our own community a peaceful and welcoming place for all your children. Help us to live the words that we pray. Amen.
Good afternoon. Let us sing My Country 'Tis of These Day. My country 'tis of thee, sweet land of liberty, of thee I sing. Land where our fathers died, land of the pilgrim's pride, from every mountainside, let freedom ring. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Hello and welcome to Rotary. It is my honor to announce all of the guests for today. When I announce your names, please stand up with your guests for a moment and then be seated. And at the end of all of the announced names, we'll give a big round of applause to everybody for coming to be with us today. So to start out, Kathy Gurrell brought her daughter, Shelley Hildebrand. Lynette Potter has her guest, Jamie Kidder from Community Care College. Bob Sade has his daughter, Kim Cook, and his son, Dan Mooney. Corey Nickerson has Marshall Horn and Sherry Horn, should have picked up on that, from Kids Against Hunger. Catherine DeCamp, that's me. I brought two future Rotarians, my daughter, Caroline DeCamp, and Gabby Greer. Katie Johnson has Tammy Maloney and Linda Culp. Oh, and also Victor Culp. There they are. Dana and Michael Burks have their daughter, Taylor Burks. Let's give them all a big round of applause. And now for our visiting Rotarians. We have Katie Nicholas, who is a Rotaract member. Amethyst Cavallaro, who is Tulsa Rotaract. And Harlan Pinkerton from Sand Springs. And Ben Gurrell from Tulsa Southside. Thank you.
Thank you again for coming, visitors. You're always welcome. We'd like to start our meeting after all of that with a reminder of our upcoming events and programs, so let's get to that. Next week, a reminder that our speaker will be Leah Wheatholder, who will talk a little bit about her stories of helping prevent or discover fraud in the workplace. And it's always fascinating to me to see how devious we humans can be. So that might give us some good stories to take home. Some future events and programs. A reminder that our Oklahoma City trip is on Tuesday, March the 29th. We'll be leaving from the parking lot here at the church at 7-ish with coffee and bagels. We'll be heading to Oklahoma City. We'll have a little tour. Then we will attend the Oklahoma City Rotary program, and then we will have another tour of the boathouse area, and then we'll make our way home, and we hope to be back at 5 o'clock or a little bit before. So it will be a full day, but I do encourage you to think about taking a day off from your work or whatever else you might do and joining us for that trip. It will be quite rewarding, I'm sure, and they will treat us like royalty the way we always treat them when they're here, and that's just do it for that reason, if nothing else. On March the 30th, G.T. Bynum will be here to talk about the Vision Tulsa program. That should be interesting. And then a reminder, on April the 6th, we are going to have a panel of persons, including those two gentlemen, who will tell us a little bit about the Hispanic community in the Tulsa area and the impact it's having and will have in the future. And we will have some good, a little interview panel for that. And then another reminder that on April 21st, is the Rotaract April 21st, the Rotaract Wine, Cheese, and Chocolate function. You're all invited. Unless you don't like to hang out with young people, maybe you don't. I happen to like it, and I encourage you to do that, and it's a really fun time, and you can leave early while they are still out on the balcony doing things that are very loud, and you can go to bed while they keep the party going. So it's perfect for everyone to come, all ages and all styles, and I encourage you to do so. We will have some Rotaractors here in future programs to talk more about it, so this is not the last you will hear. So mark your calendars now, and please try to make all of those things. I wanted to let everybody know that we have several members who could benefit from messages of encouragement, etc., from the Rotary family. So you'll see some cards on your table. One's for Ed Bentley, who fell last week and has been moved to skilled care. So he would probably love to hear some words of encouragement. Norm Asbjornson's partner of 23 years, Joy Bright, passed away on March the 9th. A celebration of her life was held yesterday afternoon, and I'm sure he would appreciate your condolences. And then also, John Shields is going through chemo treatments, and there should be a card on your table for him as well. So take some time during the meeting. You are allowed to look down at your card and write a note and express the appropriate words to those people and their families. A reminder of our committee meetings today. The Club Foundation Development Committee will meet in room 233, and the Partners in Education Committee will meet in room 232. I encourage you, whether you're a member of the committee or interested in the work of the committee in any way, to attend those meetings. Alicia, today, whom are we recognizing as our sponsor?
I forgot my notes. I had to write it on a napkin. Our sponsor today is Tim Null with We Be Trees. Tim, we appreciate it so much. We appreciate our sponsors. We rely on them heavily. We encourage you to do business with your fellow Rotarian. If you have any questions about sponsorship, feel free to see me or my pal Matt Moritor over there. Thank you.
All right, let's give Tim a round of applause and thank him. I asked Tim before the meeting if he was busy these days. He probably doesn't want me to tell you this. He said, yes, we're really busy. And I thought to myself, the best person to hire to do a job is someone who's busy. So keep that in mind. And a Rotarian on top of that. Today we have the privilege of inducting 2 new members into the Rotary Club of Tulsa. So if Ed and Stephanie, you'll make your way up with your new members, Tiffany Egdorf and Gina Bradford. While they're on the way up front, let me say thank you to Dale Astle for doing the orientation. To all of my fellow Rotarians, as I do every time we have new Rotarians, I encourage you to make Gina and Tiffany your friends and put them to work as soon as you can. So, you're first, Stephanie.
Hi, everyone. It is my privilege to introduce our newest Rotarian, Gina Bradford. Gina is a Tulsa native with family roots that trace back before statehood. She has been interested and active in the revival of downtown Tulsa for many years and was one of the first families that moved from the suburbs into one of the new downtown apartments. Gina is a member of the Tulsa Foundation for Architecture, Equality Business Alliance, and the Oklahoma Center for Community Justice. Through her firm, Bradford Marketing, she has volunteered her time to help the Special Olympics, OK to Grow, Oklahomans for Equality, and the San Miguel School, to name a few. Gina is the owner of Bradford Marketing, a digital marketing firm focused on the growing area of advertising on social media platforms. In 2013, Gina was awarded the Tulsi Award for Interactive Entrepreneur and overall Entrepreneur of the Year. Prior to forming her own company, Gina was the CTO at Williams & Williams Real Estate Auction and CIO at Penwell Corporation. Gina is one of my favorite people in Tulsa, so please help me welcome her.
It is with a great deal of pride and pleasure that I'm introducing you to our newest Rotarian, Tiffany Egdorf. Tiffany received her education at Oklahoma City University, where she has a Bachelor of Science in Dance Management. She has a Master of Arts in Ministry and Culture from Phillips Theological Seminary and is a graduate of the Tulsa Police Academy. So, not much she can't do, I don't think. She's a native Tulsan, but has lived in Atlanta, Kansas City, Oklahoma City, and Nashville. But when the statute of limitations runs out, you keep coming back, so that's a good deal. She's currently the executive director of the Lindsay House here in Tulsa at 6th and Elgin, which is a transitional living center for homeless women and children. She is very involved in the community. She was a Leadership Tulsa graduate, or is a Leadership Tulsa graduate. She is a Burroughs Reading Buddy at Burroughs Elementary School and a Junior Achievement Volunteer. So, Celia Clinton, guys, I think we've got one here. Her hobbies are dancing, reading, traveling, spending time with family and friends. She also, I've got to know Tiffany real well. She works in the children's department at Boston Avenue on Sundays. She is married to Lee Egdorf, and they have a little dog, a little beagle, the best dog name I've ever heard. Their dog is named Hammond. Hammond Egdorf. Hammond Egdorf? Get it? Okay, so I just, her husband his whole life wanted to have a dog named Hammond. Hammond Egdorf. Okay, so please give a warm Rotary welcome to Tiffany Egdorf.
Welcome to the club, Tiffany and Gina. We're so glad to have you. Those were great introductions. We feel like we know you. We have a start on that at least. Every few weeks, we like to remind the group about the great work of the Rotary Foundation. And we have shown you some great videos over the course of the year, and this one is a little bit longer than our normal video, but it's kind of a recap of the history of the Rotary Foundation. I think you'll find it very entertaining. So, learn some more about the foundation.
Our vision for the Rotary Foundation began 100 years ago. At Rotary's 1917 convention, President Arch Clump proposed an endowment for doing good in the world. His dream expanded the reach of Rotary far beyond the club. A contribution of $26.50 launched our foundation's endowment. A century later, we've spent more than $3 billion on humanitarian efforts worldwide.
Every Rotary project anywhere in the world always started out with one person who had an idea. And then they were able to grow and develop that idea by using that powerful network of Rotary to really change the world.
We are active, we are effective, we are really alive.
Our foundation has always been dedicated to improving lives. The first grant provided aid to disabled children. Today, we are on the verge of ending polio.
Et lorsque je vois une mère me sourire après avoir donné le vaccin à son enfant, cela comble ma journée de joie. Parce que j'ai la conviction que cet enfant ne sera jamais handicapé.
Without Rotary, this polio campaign wouldn't be anywhere. And the incredible effort that's been made from the very beginning is really unprecedented.
In the wake of a world war, we made a global impact by funding scholarships for international study. Today, we train the next generation of global peacemakers.
The Rotary Peace Fellowship takes people who have the desire to learn and gives them that opportunity.
Good intentions alone are not sufficient. This is one of the most important things an international organization like Rotary should do.
We all see this as a passion. We've got to do something for change. Not only for young people today, but of tomorrow.
Rotary is dedicated to personal and professional connections, so we created Group Study Exchange to build international understanding. Today, our foundation supports vocational training teams around the globe.
You turn the dial until this color matches this color.
The PTT program allows people to bring specific skills to improve another country.
Rotarians wanted to broaden their impact, so our foundation began funding their projects. A decade later, we began supporting larger projects to address health, hunger, and other humanitarian needs. Today's large-scale grants are measurable and sustainable. They allow us to tackle humanity's greatest challenges. "100 years ago, Arch Klump had a vision. His vision has become our legacy.
The Rotary Foundation is a great tool to transform the world.
That's what Rotary is all about. Vision to see, faith to believe, and courage to act.
The Rotary Foundation. We are doing good in the world. Let's continue for the next 100 years.
It's funny, no matter how crappy the presidential candidates are, or how crappy the price of oil and gas, there are still people who need us in the world, and there is still a really easy way for you to make a difference. So keep the foundation in mind and keep our club in mind. And I will tell you that one way, if you just find yourself a little removed from the foundation and Rotary International, a little unsure about what it's about, how to tell people about it, or if you just want something to do, I really encourage you to consider going to the convention. And while the one this year in Seoul in June may be out of reach for many of you, the year after that it's in Atlanta. And if I recall correctly, it's the last few days of May, first few days of June. And so it typically starts on a Saturday or Sunday and goes through Tuesday or Wednesday. And I will be leading the charge to try to get a nice group of Rotarians from this club to Atlanta in 2017. So keep that in mind. A lot of people plan their vacations and trips months or even years in advance. So while you're sitting down with your spouse or your family or friends and planning your trips, think about May, early June 2017, Atlanta for the Rotary Convention. It could really change your perspective of things. All right, we have a few project announcements today. We have Elaine and Luann for a few words on Fireside and on the showcases. So Elaine, since you're first, you can go first.
Thank you. Thanks, President Jeff. It's Fireside Chat time again. This is an old tradition that we've had in the club, and it's really a great time to get to know each other a little bit better. Your host list is here. It looks like this. I do have one very important change I'd like you to make on your host list. I got the time wrong for Miss Jane Carlson, who's going to host us at Montereau in the City View Lounge. This is a great place to meet and greet. It will be at 4:30 to 6 on Thursday. Is that right, Jane? Thursday, 4:30 to 6. So I think I had the wrong time on that one. But please look at the list, see where you'd like to attend. Sign up, give us a first, second, and third choice. I'll collect these this week and next week, and we'll sign you up with the host, and you'll receive a notice on your email or from the office telling you where you're going to be going for your fireside meeting. Thank you so much. If you have any questions at all, if I got any other times wrong, let me know. Thank you.
Thank you, Elaine.
Good afternoon, everyone. As you came in, you may have seen some Rotarians exhibiting at our vocational showcase outside. I want to thank them for coming today to talk to us about their businesses. When I read your name, if you'll please stand. We have Terry Heritage with Interim Healthcare, Kathy Gurrell and Shelley Hildebrandt with Colwell Banker Select Real Estate. We have Robert Walters with J. Mark Business Solutions and John DeBars, attorney at law. We thank you all for exhibiting today. They will be outside for about 15 minutes after the meeting if you'd like to get to know any of them and their businesses. Next week, we will have John Crouch with Good Samaritan Health Services, and I hear that they're going to be bringing their big a medical bus van for us to tour. Tom Klenda with Newton O'Connor, Turner and Ketchum will be here. Royal Ailes with RSU TV, and Ron Butler with American Eagle Lighting. Thank you.
Thanks, Sue Ann, and thanks to all of you who've taken the time and effort to come here and tell us a bit about your businesses. I'm confident that you will see some benefit from that. All right, we have a Club Foundation grant announcement to make. So if Beth, are you going to be the leader of this? Come on up to the microphone and bring your guests. It's our tradition to have many of our recipients of grants from the foundation come here and be our guests. So lead the way, Beth.
Well, I had no idea until I took part on this committee what some of these nonprofits did. And this is a fascinating process, by the way. If you all have the chance to serve on that committee, it was really eye-opening for me. And one thing that I learned was that the Mental Health Association of Tulsa is no longer just of Tulsa, it's the Mental Health Association Oklahoma, and it's been that way since 2013. They do wonderful work in terms of mental health, but also housing veterans and people at risk of homelessness. Here in Tulsa, she'll explain to you how many people they house, but we were lucky enough to go on a tour and meet a veteran who lived in one of their apartments. And I had no idea that they did this in Tulsa. I don't know where I've been, but I really didn't know. So anyway, I'd like to introduce Lisa Turner, who is the Director of Development at Mental Health Association Oklahoma, and she will tell you more about what our grant is going to do for the people that they serve, or some of the people that they serve.
Great. Thank you, Beth, so much. And I'm just thrilled to be here, one, at the best Rotary Club in the world. And two, I'm often here as a guest of fellow Rotarian and my husband, Michael, but I was really excited to come today and receive a check from the Rotary Foundation. So thank you all so very much. I am with Mental Health Association Oklahoma, and for a number of years, the association has provided housing for individuals who are overcoming mental illness, substance abuse, and homelessness. We've had a tremendous success in that. In fact, we're known nationally for the housing programs that we provide here in Tulsa. Our housing portfolio has grown from one location with 12 beds back in 1991 to now 18 different locations in 18 different communities scattered across the city of Tulsa with a total of over 1,400 units of housing in our community. Yeah. One of the things that we're passionate about is making sure that no veteran is homeless. And unfortunately, you all know the statistics that many veterans do end up, after their service to our country, of being homeless. And so Mental Health Association, along with other partner agencies as part of a Way Home for Tulsa, including our dear friend Tiffany over here with the Lindsay House, are working to end chronic homelessness and veteran homelessness by the end of this year, 2016. And I'm happy to say that the city of Tulsa is one of 75 communities across the U.S. who are on target to reach that goal. Last year, we housed 220 veterans off the streets and into housing here in Tulsa. So we are well on our way to making sure that no veteran ends up chronically homeless on the streets. What we found as we were moving veterans into apartments is that those apartments were empty. And while we're thrilled to be able to provide a roof over their head and a key to lock their door, they didn't have a place to sit. they didn't have a refrigerator. They didn't have a bed to lay on. And so we initiated this small campaign, partnering with Snow's Furniture, to create a basic apartment furnishing package so that for $1,250, one of our new residents can have a bed, a dining table, a recliner, and just those basic things to make that apartment feel like a home for them. And so thanks to the gift from the Rotary Club Foundation, and I think we have a couple of photos here of some of the residents who will be benefiting from this. But we were able to make 2 apartments to veterans' homes from your gift. So I just want to thank you for that. One brief story, one of the veterans, and I believe this is the gentleman that you met, but one of the veterans that will be receiving furniture from you all is named Randy. Randy followed in his father's footsteps, and he joined the Marine Corps at the age of 17. He served 3.5 years, his country, including some time in Korea. After he got out of the military, he worked for a number of years in the construction industry, and then the economy took a downturn. And unfortunately, he lost his job, and he ended up homeless on the streets of Tulsa. He lived in East Tulsa near a railroad track for a number of years with several other homeless veterans. And it wasn't until about 6 months ago that one of our homeless outreach team members met Randy, offered him an apartment in Tulsa, and now we've been able to wrap the services around him to now he's reconnected in the community, he's working, he's paying taxes, and he's doing what Rotarians do, he's service above self. Randy is now a witness to other veterans and going out in the community and saying, hey, I can help you get your feet back on the ground. And so for that, thank you so much to the Rotary Foundation for your investment in veterans in the city of Tulsa.
And on behalf of the Rotary Club of Tulsa Foundation Grant Committee, I'd like to give you a $2,500 donation. Thank you.
All right, it's my pleasure to introduce our Rotarian of the Day, past President Bob Sade. Bob is the president of Sade Music Company, as you all know. He's been a member since April 1977, and he has perfect attendance since 1977. Always so humble, aren't you? Bob is a member of the Allen Edwards Society. He's a Club Foundation Fellow, a Paul Harris Fellow. He served as the president of our club in 2001-2002, and he was Rotarian of the Year for the year 2014-15. Please welcome Bob Sade.
Galileo. The very name conjures up memories of 8th grade science class, and in my case, many tests barely passed. As part of his bio, our speaker sent the following quote from Albert Einstein: "Imagination is more important than knowledge." Apparently, my 8th grade science teacher did not subscribe to that theory. Our speaker earned his undergraduate and graduate degrees from Truman State University in Missouri, and a master's in library science and a doctorate in history of science from OU. He has taught high school chemistry and biology, directed a university planetarium, taught university astronomy, geology, science education, and history of science. Currently, he is a faculty member of OU's Department of History of Science, Medicine, and Technology. He has presented numerous scholarly talks in both America and Europe, including presentations on Galileo at NASA headquarters in Langley, Virginia, as well as astronomy and physics programs at Michigan State, New Mexico State, Florida State, and others. Please welcome a gentleman who undoubtedly set the curve in his 8th grade science class, Dr. Kerry Magruder.
It is a real delight to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me. Just like the Rotarians, the exhibition Galileo's World is meant to bring worlds together. 3 quick stories will illustrate that. First, consider this book, bound and cased in a typical Asian style. Johann Schreck was a friend of Galileo's who assisted him during his telescopic discoveries. A few years later, Schreck went to China, where he wrote this work on engineering in Chinese with Chinese collaborators. So be honest, raise your hand. How many people knew Galileo had a friend in China? Here's a second example. This book by Francesco Hernandez is the most important early natural history of the Americas. Hernandez spent half a dozen years living among the Aztecs in central Mexico, compiling their botanical and medical knowledge. Galileo and his colleagues worked many long years to publish it. It finally appeared in 1651. This is an early draft copy, printed a dozen years before that. The medical knowledge of the natives of central Mexico was important to Galileo and his generation. It transformed European life science into a global endeavor in which Native Americans here in Oklahoma can have a stake. Consider a third story. Johann Hevelius was the leading European telescopic observer in the last half of the 1600s. This massive book was the first comprehensive lunar atlas. It accurately mapped the moon less than 40 years after Galileo was able to discover mountains on the moon with the telescope. But on the frontispiece, Hevelius portrays Ibn al-Haytham, a leading medieval Islamic astronomer and optical theorist. And on the right, holding a telescope, is Galileo. Now, who would have guessed that one of the most impressive works of the scientific revolution would portray Galileo in Middle Eastern dress as a tribute to the tradition of Islamic science? So we've seen that Galileo's world brings together worlds as far removed as Asia, America, and the Middle East. So if Galileo's world brought worlds together in the past, what does that matter for us today? So with Galileo's world, we are bringing worlds together. We are connecting the world of OU and of Oklahoma to the world of Galileo. Creating conversations about these is our way of celebrating OU's 125th anniversary. Now, Galileo's World is an exhibition without walls. 21 different galleries, each with its own distinct theme, occur in 7 different locations distributed across all 3 campuses of OU. For example, in Norman, you can see this little manuscript reporting Galileo's telescopic discoveries, written by the leading Catholic astronomer in Rome at the time. It was purchased with funds new to scholars, never published before, came on the market a few years ago, and the athletic department acquired it for us. So during the 2004 bowl game, this is one of several tweets that were likely overlooked among the general despair, confusion, and sorrow. How many athletic departments buy rare books for their libraries? So go Sooners. What would Coach Galileo say? There's an exhibit in the athletic department on that topic, and quite a lot, actually. Or to switch to another campus, the Health Sciences campus in Oklahoma City, the Byrd Library has an exhibit on Galileo and healthcare. This is one of the books there. But today, in the next few minutes, let's visit the Schusterman Library on the OU campus here in Tulsa. Here's Stuart Brower, director of the Schusterman Library, at their opening reception. Stuart is with us today. Stuart, would you please stand? Galileo's World wouldn't have happened without Stuart. Thank you, Stuart, for your stalwart support, enthusiasm throughout this entire endeavor. Literally an hour before this picture was taken, he was wearing a T-shirt as we were installing the exhibit, and somehow got it done in time. The theme of the Schusterman Gallery is the scientific revolution. The theme comes from this book. This is the first book printed on Tycho Brahe's own printing press at his island of Wien, where he had the city of the stars, Uraniborg, great 16th century astronomer. In many ways, this book captures the theme of the entire Galileo's World exhibition, because Tycho's motto, written in Latin on the side there, was "Looking up, I look down." What he meant was Tycho coordinated the study of astronomy, which is looking up, with the study of medicine, chemistry, and geology, which is looking down. This emphasis on connections between the different disciplines encourages us to consider how to converse with people who are different than we are, who know things, to be interested in what they know that we do not, and to consider the lessons we can learn from others, no matter who they may be. Now, the next book on display is a 1588 star atlas by Paolo Gallucci, a star atlas Galileo knew. Gallucci published the first star atlas to mathematically plot the positions of stars in 2 dimensions, both upwards and side to side. The book is filled with dozens of paper instruments. They're models for predicting the positions of the planets. We tell the story of star atlases, starting with Gallucci, at the Fred Jones Jr. Museum of Art on the Norman campus. For example, here's Taurus the Bull from Johann Bayer, the most important atlas of Galileo's generation. Sagittarius the Archer from Johann and Elizabeth Hevelius, the late 17th century. A planisphere from the same star atlas. Now, sections of a celestial globe are called gores, and these are gores to make a 3.5-foot diameter globe by Vincenzo Coronelli, the leading maker of globes in the late 17th century. Take a closer look at 3 of these sections. They reveal the constellation Argo Navis, the ship of the Argonauts. Or John Flamsteed's great star atlas from the early 18th century. Flamsteed founded the Greenwich Observatory in England. Or Johann Bode's giant atlas from 1801. And here's another magnificent plate from the Bode Atlas. But it's not just the great atlases that are on display. This one, Catherine Whitwell wrote an introduction to astronomy for a school in Scotland. It's written as an entertaining, engaging dialogue, and then she moved to Ohio and set up a school there. So all this story starts with the Atlas of Gallucci, and this is on display here in Tulsa. I chose to send the Gallucci Atlas here to honor the Schustermans' long-standing work with amateur astronomers here in the Tulsa area, who showed up at the opening reception so that families might enjoy putting their eyes on the moon as part of their trip to the library. Now, the third book in our tour of the Schusterman Gallery is A History of Mathematics. It's not a printed book, it's a manuscript written by the hand of the author, not printed. The author was a leading Italian mathematician about 20 years older than Galileo. It's open to the page recounting Nicholas Copernicus, who in 1543 proposed that the sun is in the center and that the earth revolves in space around the sun. Now, one of the most interesting copies of Copernicus' book in the whole world is this heavily annotated first edition on display at Bazell Memorial Library. OU is one of the few libraries in the world to contain not just this, but all 3 editions of Copernicus published up to and during the life of Galileo. Now, the telescope was invented more than 60 years after Copernicus, not by Galileo, but by a Dutch craftsman. He wrote no books, but his brother published this account a decade after Galileo's discoveries. We tell the story of Galileo and the telescope at the Fred Jones Art Museum. Galileo's telescope replica was provided to us by the Museo Galileo in Florence. When you go to Florence, don't miss the Museo Galileo. The book is The Starry Messenger, the first published report of observations made with a telescope. The Starry Messenger made Galileo an international celebrity overnight. And let me just mention, the instruments in the exhibit, some are replicas, some are on loan from institutions like the Museo Galileo, but all 350 rare books across all the different locations belong to OU. None of them are facsimiles, all are originals. Now, the OU copy of this work, The Starry Messenger, was inscribed by Galileo in the lower right corner. This is the only extant copy that survives with Galileo's handwriting. Now, we have the British Library, the Library of Congress, each have about 6 first editions by Galileo. Depending on how you count them, he wrote about 12 books. No matter how you count them, we have them all. Of the Oklahoma first editions, this is one of 4 copies that contains his own handwriting. Now, and this is the work where Galileo reported his discovery of mountains on the moon, the satellites of Jupiter, and vast numbers of unsuspected stars revealed by his telescope. By the way, an unremarkable copy of this book sold in 2009 for $1.1 million. Next on our quick tour of the Schusterman Library exhibit is Oliver Burns' 19th century edition of Euclid's Elements of Geometry. This is Burns' color-coded graphical proof of the Pythagorean theorem. And Bob, if you had used this one instead, I bet you would have been at the top of the class. It's a masterpiece of visual presentation and design. Other editions of Euclid are on display on the 5th floor of Bazell Memorial Library, newly renovated on the Norman campus. This hand-colored 1482 edition featured at the time an innovative method for printing geometrical diagrams. This Arabic edition was printed in Baghdad or Cairo? No, in Rome by Galileo's employers, the Medici, when Galileo was a young man, and he knew mathematicians who learned Arabic in order to read this and similar works. This first English translation of Euclid, printed in 1570, contained pop-ups of the regular solids and other interesting learning aids that maybe we can figure out how to do that with the web page, I don't know. Next on our Schusterman tour is a book on chemistry, written about Galileo's experiments with a phosphorus-containing substance then known as the Bologna stone. The Bologna stone glowed in the dark, producing light, but mysteriously with no heat. Then we have an interesting code wheel in a work on cryptography by the most important cryptographer of the Renaissance, one of Galileo's friends and mentors. An interactive version of this code wheel is being developed at the Sam Noble Museum in Norman. This book is entitled The Caterpillar Garden. It investigates the symbiotic relationships of plants, caterpillars, and butterflies. It is richly illustrated, just page after page. Both plants and insects are highly accurate, drawn with fine detail. It was written by Maria Marion, who lived in the same generation as Isaac Newton, and in that generation she was just as famous. The Rotarians of that day, I mean the citizens of Amsterdam, funded her scientific expeditions to South America and Southeast Asia, on which her books were based. Levinus Vincent, a wealthy Dutch merchant with ties to the East Indies, created a spectacular natural history museum in Leiden. Women, by the way, were curators, collectors, lecturers in museums, even at a time when they were refused admission to the universities. We're grateful that both museums on the Norman campus chose to participate in Galileo's world. The Sam Noble Museum of Natural History in Norman has hosted 2 different galleries, one last fall and one now in the spring semester that will continue through the summer. Last fall's exhibit told the story of Hernandez in the natural history of the Americas that I mentioned earlier. The current gallery there features this document. Now, it's written by 2 of Galileo's friends. It's the first publication of observations with a microscope. And few people who work with microscopes in their professional lives today realize that the name comes from Galileo's circle, applied to an instrument that he fabricated, and that the first publication came from his circle. This is it. Only 4 copies, printed intact copies, survive. So we tell the story of early microscopy this semester there. And finally, this 1887 work by John Finley. This is the first book written in English devoted to tornadoes. Finley was the first meteorologist to issue tornado warnings, and then he was told not to because it might frighten people. He surveyed patterns of tornado damage based on eyewitness reports of actual tornado strikes. But if we look more closely at Oklahoma, were there few tornadoes in Oklahoma or just not enough reports getting to him in 1887? I think the map would be different now. Galileo's work in meteorology with the thermometer, the barometer, and the air pump is one of 5 topics explored at the National Weather Center in Norman. Space science in Oklahoma, rich history that we have, is another topic there, along with space science after Galileo. The National Weather Center hosts more rare books than any other exhibit outside of the library on the Norman campus, so don't miss the National Weather Center if you're in Norman. Now, here at the Schusterman Library, more than 350 people attended their opening reception last fall. It was a family event with many activities for children. Classes and other school groups have been visiting the exhibit during the winter, including these high schoolers. Even Galileo himself dropped by, unexpectedly, interrupting a presentation. He quizzed me to find out exactly what we're up to and doing this year. And I'm happy to say that the participants in that event just a few weeks ago would report that he approved. On the main floor of the Bazell Library in Norman, we invite students and visitors to explore an app made here in Tulsa by Daniel Mooney, who is here with us today. Daniel, would you stand? So Daniel is a founder of the startup company Moomot, and visitors use this app to explore Galileo's world as a starting point to discover unexpected connections to their world today. You can download it from the App Store by searching for Galileo's World. To dive further into Galileo's world, you can download 1,000 pages of good reading of stories for your iPad. Search the iBook store for Galileo's World exhibit guide. Every book on display is being digitized in its entirety and made freely available online in high resolution. The research library for the Galileo's World will launch later this semester. When I think of Galileo's World, I recall the story of OU President David Ross Boyd. I'm sure you've heard this before. Boyd accepted the position of university president by mail. He arrived in Norman expecting to see an established university. He found only a dusty town of 600 people. The prairie was barren except for grass. No buildings, no trees. Yet in his diary, he wrote, "While some might have been discouraged, I could only see possibilities." We immortalize Boyd's vision in the planting of trees and the sower spirit of OU. Similarly, the people of Florence committed to building a cathedral so large that it was impossible by any method then known to complete it, to build a dome upon it. Yet when the time came, almost miraculously, they found a way to do it, by far the largest masonry dome ever built up to that time. The story of Brunelleschi's dome is like the story of Oklahoma. What possibilities! Oklahoma and Tuscany have a deep affinity. So in the reading nook on the first floor of the main library in Norman, we start with David Ross Boyd in this story. And on the opposite wall, we juxtapose the world of Renaissance Tuscany with the Galileo collection of the History of Science collections. A little bit of Tuscany was transplanted to the windswept plains of Oklahoma. So now the story of Galileo has become part of our experience as Oklahomans, connecting our worlds across space and time. Through exploring the world of Galileo, we may each recover a small piece of our own past. The past is essential for adding meaning for our endeavors, both now and into the future. So thank you. Thank you so much for coming out, and it really is great to be here and interact with you. I'll stay as long as people have questions, but maybe we have time for one or two before we break right at 1 o'clock. Any questions? Wayne? Oh, yes? Does OU have any students currently studying in Tuscany? And absolutely. This semester, a new campus based on a monastery that OU has purchased and has just completed renovating will have its official opening. So a small number of students have been studying there for each of the last several years. It's in the town of Arezzo, less than a 40-minute train ride from Florence. But that process is ramping up with the official opening this semester. There's no reason why any OU student couldn't spend a semester in Tuscany. I might even mention that the College of Engineering has a very aggressive program. They took over 20 students last summer to Tuscany, to Arezzo, and they took field trips not only to Florence but also to Pisa. They studied the engineering of the Tower of Pisa, built on a delta. Every building there tilts in different directions. It wasn't a mistake of engineering. They were shrewd engineers to build it at all. They came back and those students built an 18-foot tall, 1/10 scale replica of the Leaning Tower that's inside the main entrance to the library as their contribution to Galileo's World, directly resulting from this connection to the Arezzo campus. Yes?
Is the public able to go into any of these libraries and look at these exhibits?
Yes, all of these are open. So for the Fred Jones Museum of Art, the Sam Noble Museum, they have hours posted on the internet. The National Weather Center is a little unusual. They have had to change that because they're a federal building as well. They've had to work out new procedures, but it's in the atrium, which is accessible without calling a week ahead. So you can even see the exhibit at the National Weather Center. Because of the 12,000 square foot renovation on the 5th floor of the Bazell Memorial Library, for the first time ever, the History of Science Collections now has a walk-in exhibit hall. So we didn't used to have that. We have nearly 100,000 rare volumes in 4 climate-controlled vaults. And yet, to this point, they've been accessible only to elite scholars and advanced students, not to the public. All that has changed with Galileo's World. From now on, every year there will be an exhibit open to the public for school groups, classes to visit, but also just walk-in visitors. I might mention one more thing, and that is that the exhibit in Tulsa, here at the Schusterman Library, it's open for 2 more weeks. So while this is fresh in your mind, please make your way down to Yale Avenue and the OU Tulsa campus. And I believe the date, Stuart, is at March 30th is the takedown date, so the 29th would be the last day to see it. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Magruder. A book recognizing today's program will be donated to the library at our partner in education school, Celia Clinton, and the title of it is Origins of Olympus. And Kerry has inscribed a message to the students on there, and we thank you for that. On your way out, be sure to thank the volunteers listed on the board who made the program possible, and I encourage you to go tell your family, friends, and colleagues about the Galileo's World and Dr. Kerry Magruder. We're adjourned.